just watched the Interstellar Song Contest. A couple big talking points with this episode, of course, but let's kind of sidestep the kind of big things here. Let's talk about the kind of episode generally first. I thought it was good. Obviously, this is written by Juno Dawson, who has written some stuff for the expanded media. I believe was kind of the main writer on Doctor Who Redacted, which I did listen to the first series of. I really enjoyed that. And I don't think I got round to the second series of that. I think I listened to maybe one episode, but she's written some stuff for the kind of expanded media of the show. I know she wrote a 13th Doctor novel, which was, I think, generally quite well liked. So it's nice to see her make the jump to TV. It's nice to have our first trans writer write for the show. That's a really great kind of, step forward in terms of the kind of diversity in the writing, in the writer's room there for the show, which is great. And I knew that I'd not, other than Redacted, I wasn't massively familiar with Juno Dawson's previous work, and I think I spoke about this briefly last week, talking about Inua Ellams, but I was also familiar with Juno Dawson from her time on the official Doctor Who podcast. I know she's a big sort of McCoy era fan, and you can really tell that this was a fan writer for the show. It's I think the great thing about this episode is that I think it really kind of hit the right amount of camp, where it was just fun, a bit of fun and a bit silly when it needed to be, kind of jump more to the end of the episode. The kind of montage of waking all the people up to making your mind up is a silly sequence, but I think it kind of that works, and the Doctor kind of firing through space on a confetti cannon, like Wall-E, but then even he's like, oh, that's quite camp, but it also had those kind of more serious moments, some great, moments of reflection for the character. The Doctor kind of goes really dark here. He gets triggered by the murder of 3 trillion people. This kind of massacre of people. It was a really wonderful sequence. And I know it'd been in some of the trailers and the promo images and stuff of, the Doctor kind of flying through the ceiling, flying into space, and we knew about that, but I hadn't really kind of, in the kind of previews for that sequence, I hadn't necessarily looked in the background and seen all the other people flying about, and the moment where the Doctor's he's kind of fiddling with the pod, and in the background, from the centre, people just start rising, was quite dark. It was a really sort of chilling sequence of just seeing these masses of people just kind of falling upwards to their death. I mean, they don't die, but kind of in the moment, it's like, oh my god, that's wow. And I think that it was kind of a perfectly executed moment of the Doctor. He kind of flies up, the TARDIS is lost, and then we didn't return to him for quite a while, for a good couple of minutes, which I was a little bit surprised by, but I think really worked. It added to the kind of the effectiveness of, like, yeah, he's gone, they're all gone and they're all dead, And it really made Belinda feel kind of just totally. You kind of feel her like, the doctor's gone, and I'm stuck, I'm trapped. She has this kind of full-on kind of panic about like, I don't even know where I am or what's going on. You also get that little joke with Rylan, and I think Rylan, he's clearly a really good sport with this, making jokes about his teeth, his joke about his career being summed up by coming back from the dead. That's very funny. I'm not the biggest Rylan fan, but I don't hate the guy. But I think this kind of slipping in that joke where he goes, "Oh no," again as he's getting frozen, is a funny joke. But the fact that it's a funny joke that then kind of lends itself to the resolution. It's just such a sound script, a really tight story from Juno Dawson. I think it really comes together. The side characters were interesting, but not necessarily the most memorable. I think the couple who, one of them's a medical expert, one of them's a kind of tech expert. Again, that's that kind of camp thing of like, wow, it sure is lucky there's these two people who have the exact right skill sets that we need. And I'm sure some people will be like, well, isn't that a massive coincidence? It's like, yeah, that's storytelling. Like sometimes coincidences just happen for the story, and I think the tone kind of got it right. This series has been full of kind of weird moments of really making my kind of jaw drop. That moment in Lux when they arrive in the Doctor Who fans' front room, which I kind of thought had kind of heard rumours about, but it was still a shock to like, oh, they're doing this. The well, obviously, I was kind of aware that it was probably a midnight sequel, but that's a big shocker moment. The twist in Lucky Day, the moment when the fugitive Doctor shows up in the story in the engine, really kind of totally threw me. And then in this episode, just to get a brief glimpse of Susan in the TARDIS, what? And I think she says, "Is it come back or go back?" I think she says go back, but I kind of feel like it would make more sense if she said come back, given that obviously that's what the Doctor said all those years ago. One day I will come back. I can't imagine we won't see Susan in the finale now. Like, she's definitely going to show up, because why else would you have her here? If she's not going to be in the finale. But just a kind of like, oh wow, okay. And it's lovely to see Caroline Ford. I'm so glad. Like, it's a little bit morbid to say it, I suppose, but isn't it wonderful to get her back while she's still around? She's not getting any younger. She looks wonderful for her age. It's still, more than active and more than capable. But yeah, it's really wonderful to have her, especially when you consider, we got William Russell a couple of years ago in Power of the Doctor, and he has since passed. And so it does really feel like, if we want to do a Susan story with Caroline Ford, you got to do it, sooner rather than later, because, as I say, she's not getting any younger. So I look forward to seeing her in the finale. I can't imagine we won't. We might also see Joe Martin in the finale. That I'm less kind of convinced about, but what a cool reveal. What a cool little element. And it's, I think the thing about both of those reveals is the fact that they're just in kind of, just like just normal episodes. You know, they're not big finale episodes or anything. They're just like, oh, midway through a series, here's a Doctor cameo, here's Susan, which I think is not only makes them more effective. Like, you know, when Fugitive of the Jejune came out, and they just drop a whole brand new Doctor on us midway through a series in a Jejune episode. You know, it makes these things really effective, and it also kind of makes me think about like it's a bit of a classic Who thing where there was less kind of focus on there weren't really series arcs in classic Who, with the exception of the Key to Time and Trial of a Time Lord, and so you would just get like the two Doctors midway through a season. It's just a cool thing to get Susan here, and the fact that that is what allowed the Doctor to then kind of come back, and but he keeps kind of seeing flashes of her, and it lends into this thing with the Doctor, a really interesting side of this Doctor, where he is, and he says as much, he's just triggered by this horrific sort of massacre, this you know, I don't know if it is, you know, technically a genocide, because it's not necessarily wiping out a species, but 3 trillion people is certainly a massacre, if not a genocide. And, you know, that touches a nerve with the Doctor, not only because the Time Lords are all dead, which again, you know, they kind of reiterate, last of the Time Lords, blah blah blah, again in this story, for the reveal at the end of the credits, or midway through the titles, the credits at the end. Obviously, because we're now at this point where the Time Lords are dead again from Timeless Children, but I think it also touches a nerve with him, because of the first time that happened, it was him who did it, so he knows what it's like to kill that many people, and it's probably no coincidence that Kid, the antagonist, was going to use a delta wave, which, if you recall, was what the Doctor was going to use to defeat the Daleks, but also would wipe out the Earth in the parting of the ways, and he doesn't do it, but like he's constructing a delta wave in that story, and it's a big part of his arc there. Kid's going to use a delta wave to wipe out these people. A really interesting side of the Doctor, a really interesting wrinkle in his and Melinda's friendship, their relationship, where Melinda goes, actually, I really do like this guy and I think he is wonderful, but also that's not what he's like, because they don't know each other that well necessarily, but even she's like, that's not right, what's going on there, you know, so it's really interesting character stuff for the Doctor and Belinda here, really fun gags, really great tone, an interesting kind of, you know, antagonist and his motivation. I was a little bit surprised that we only ever hear the Corporation as the Corporation. Like, it never kind of named, but then I suppose that kind of makes it more broad in terms of its commentary about, like, because it's clearly talking about corporations who you know, will go to places and will completely devastate the wildlife and the ecosystem there for their own gain, and, you know, and displace the natural population and demonise the natural population. It's really interesting thinking about that, and then thinking about, it kind of makes me think about Andor, which finished recently. If you haven't watched Andor, I mean, get on that. But the whole story of the Gorman massacre in that series, and you know, the Empire devastating this planet for resources that they want, and demonising the people there, you know, making them the enemy to then massacre them, and, you know, totally destabilise their planet for this resource that they want for in this case, profit, for a product, for not even for any flavouring. It's just such a wonderful, it's a really kind of pressing topic, but I like the fact that, the Doctor kind of calls out that, like, I've seen lots of people who want to get revenge, and you're just a bastard, like, you're just evil. You just like killing people. You're not, this isn't about revenge. It certainly isn't about justice for your people, because then you've got, is her name Wim, who kind of is a little bit less on board with the kind of evilness of his plan, and, and kind of has that moment at the end where she's really moved by the song, and even he's kind of moved by the song at the end. That was a really nice moment, and I kind of like the fact that it was a song in an alien language, and it was about the emotion of her singing it, and the emotion of these characters feeling it, rather than the specifics of the word. I didn't know what to make of this one, because I thought that, is it going to be too camp? I'm not the biggest Eurovision fan, but the more I talk about it, the more I think about it, the more I really, I think it just really works. I think it's a really, really strong story, actually, and that's great. It's lovely to have that. I think it's one that I've enjoyed a lot of this season, actually. It's been really strong. It's been kind of, compared to last year, kind of night and day, in a weird way, which is wonderful. So that's very. It's nice to have a season that is good. Although, I thought the Robot Revolution was just fine. I didn't love Lucky Day when I watched it, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. The story in the engine I thought was good, but probably worked a lot better for other people. I think maybe it needs a rewatch, but like, there hasn't been a real dud of an episode, actually, I don't think. And this one has really, really clicked with me. It's really like, actually no, there's a lot here to talk about. Absolutely bring Juno Dawson back. She's a fantastic writer. This is such a sound script, such a really well-crafted story that does great things with the Doctor and Belinda, and has these cool reveals, really adds to the element of the mystery of the series as well. I love that kind of bait and switch of being like, oh, the contest started all the way on Earth, and they're going, oh, see, Earth is fine, there's nothing to worry about, and then and then you get Graham Norton at the end. And I remember when it was announced that Graham Norton was going to be in this, the kind of comment from Russell being like, it's not even a cameo, he's got like a full role with a plot twist, he's relevant to the plot. And we're getting to the end of the episode, I'm like, well, it seems like mostly just a cameo, surely he's going to show up again. And then he does, and he's like, yeah, Earth is dead, and it died on this day, and no one knows why, and it died, really, that was fun. And I like the fact that, like, let's get Rylan as Rylan, let's get Graham Norton as Graham Norton. They both really came for this, both really kind of got the kind of tone of it. I feel like I'm just kind of gushing about this. I didn't expect to be this excited about this episode, but no, it really, really worked for me, which is wonderful. It's a really great feeling to have that. So it's, I think, overall really, really positive. I realise as well there's no next time trailer. That's quite interesting. We know kind of nothing about the finale. But I suppose I should. dancing around the elephant in the room, really, shouldn't I? I think because it's a moment kind of after the episode ends, I wanted to talk about the episode on its own merits first, and how much I really enjoyed that. Now let's talk about the Rani, because it turns out, after all these years of saying this person's the Rani, this person's the Rani, is Missy gonna be the Rani? Is it gonna be the Rani in the vault? Is the Timeless Child gonna be the Rani? Is Susan Triad the Rani? It turns out Mrs. Flood is the Rani. She bi-generates. And we get, I forget her name, it was in the credits, as a kind of a younger Rani. But we've got kind of Mrs. Flood and the Rani. Which, let's just be clear, a really great costume there. That red coat, yeah, that absolutely works. Whether or not that's what she'll be wearing in the finale, I don't know. But in a way, it's like, it felt like an inevitability that we were gonna get the Rani. Like, there's been so much kind of fan joking and fan speculation about it for years. The fact that it's done now. We can stop going like, is it going to be the Rani? It is. And what's really great, I think, about doing this now, even though it's a bit weird to do it, in the mid-credits, is that whereas like last season, episode 7, Legend of Ruby Sunday, is a load of doing mostly nothing, wasting time for a big reveal of something that, the majority of your audience probably don't understand and don't care about, right? And that episode ends on the reveal of Sutek, and then you've got one episode to try and show his kind of why he's the big bad, and then also wrap up all your other stories. And I think we kind of all collectively agree it doesn't really work. Empire of Death is not very good. Doing this reveal here means that we now have a 2-episode finale. We're going in, we're like, and it's the Rani. We know it's the Rani. So let's just see what the story is. I think already we're at a better point to get, and again with the end of the episode with the TARDIS cloister bell and the kind of TARDIS doors blowing in, Again, it's that thing of, it's kind of night and day from last year where, Rogue ends like any other episode, and then the Legend of Ruby Sunday starts, and the Doctor's kind of arbitrarily gone, oh, I keep seeing this woman, and let's figure out who she is. There's no kind of build-up, there's no lead into, we have to, confront this mystery. Whereas with this, we've got that lead in for the Doctor and Belinda and their story of trying to get back to Earth on this date in 2025, as well as the kind of Mrs. Flood mystery. There's been more for the audience that the Doctor isn't even aware of. He doesn't know about the Rani yet. But we've got kind of both of those ready to go for a 2-episode finale now. Plus, we've got Susan surely has to pop up. I mean, maybe she doesn't, and okay, fine, but I find it hard to believe that she won't be in this. Maybe we get Fugitive Doctor. Maybe maybe we get Doctor Who as a TV show again. Maybe we get all sorts of, maybe there's loads of other people who we don't know are in this finale. And I'm not the speculating type. I'm not interested in going oh, maybe this and this and this and this. I mean, we know so little about the finale, which is good. I would prefer to keep it that way, but I was, as much as I've been enjoying this series, especially the first couple of weeks, I was always but, I enjoyed I enjoyed episodes last year, kind of as they were coming out. and then the finale totally dropped the ball. And now my opinion of the series, season 1 as a whole, is it's not great. And I was enjoying this season more as it was coming out, and the episodes felt much more kind of connected, and it felt much more coherent than last year. But it was still like, but the finale could be bad again. I'm going in now with much more faith that, like, I think we're going to get something better. I mean, I would be surprised if it was worse than last year's finale, because that was a real... It was just a weird mess. And I remember being, I think, fairly positive. I think I was quite nice to it in my initial reaction. My opinion of it has very much changed since then. But I'm going in with much more faith this time. I'm still cautious. It still could all go badly. But we're in a better position going into the finale this year than we were last year, by a country mile. I think the only thing really is that, like, why was Mrs. Flood, why was Lorani constantly breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience? I think let's get that explained. But yeah, I let's see. This has been a really good run of stories, and yeah, I thought this episode would probably be fine, but I didn't have kind of any massive expectations for it. But it really surprised me, and I kind of finished it and went, oh, that was good. And then in talking about it here, I've gone, oh no, that was really good, actually. That was really, really strong. Is it my favourite episode this series? Maybe it is. I really like the well. I got a lot out of Lux. I know for a lot of people the story in the engine was very, very strong. I think maybe if I rewatch that one, I might get more out of it. I enjoyed it the first time, but yeah, what a great season, isn't it wonderful to have a really good series? I also saw as well a TV Zone article, I think reporting from the Mirror, but there's been no kind of official word on this, that we are getting a third series regardless of the Disney decision. It might be, not for 2 years, but it is gonna happen. Like, we are gonna get it, which is good. The show's not being cancelled, which I didn't ever really think it would be. I think it makes the BBC and BBC Studios too much money, like, commercially, to cancel it. It was just a case of, is it going to be on Disney still? I suspect maybe it won't be. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And I think if it is going to be a wait till 2027 series, they might push back War Between the Land and the Sea to next year, because that's probably ready to go sort of end of this year, I think. But they might push it to next year so that there's something in 2026, and they'll probably have a Christmas special 2026. But if we get to the end of this series and Disney goes no, depending on how quickly they can start shooting, if it's a smaller budget, because a lot of the time is the post-production and the visual effects and stuff, we could get a series next year, but we'll see. But it's nice to kind of have a bit of confirmation that the show's not cancelled. Yeah, what a great episode, what a lovely series. I'm having a lot of fun, and it's baffling to me it's the same creative team from last series, because that was so... It just felt... That last series feels so amateur compared to this. But yeah, I'm having a great time. I really enjoyed this episode. I'm looking forward to the finale, which is even as much as I've enjoyed this series, I've still been kind of dreading the finale. But now I'm like, no, bring it on. Let's see what you Did you enjoy it? Maybe you didn't like it. Maybe you're fuming that Mrs. Flood is the Rani. Maybe you'll enjoy your sabbatical